Spring 1945. Baden-Württemberg, Germany. The American soldier's voice echoed through the farmhouse cellar, where 23 German women huddled in darkness. "Come out with your hands visible." The translation, imperfect but clear enough, triggered silent terror. These women, officially designated as Helferinnen, but assigned as special companions to SS officers at a nearby command post, had been told precisely what American soldiers would demand next: complete undressing, followed by inevitable violation. "We don't want to undress," whispered Margaret Böhler, aged 22, to the others. The oldest among them, a 34-year-old former secretary from Munich, nodded grimly. They had heard the stories. Propaganda Minister Goebbels had ensured every German woman knew what awaited them when Americans arrived: systematic rape, public humiliation, possible execution. The women clutched what remaining possessions they had: small photographs, identity papers, a few personal items, preparing for the worst as boots approached the cellar door. When it swung open, revealing 4 American soldiers silhouetted against the April sunlight, the women instinctively pressed themselves against the damp stone walls. "Bitte nicht ausziehen," one woman pleaded. "Please don't make us undress." The American sergeant, confused by the reaction, turned to his translator. After a brief exchange, his expression shifted from confusion to understanding. Rather than demanding their clothes, he extended army-issue blankets through the doorway. "For warmth," the translator explained. "You'll be transported to a processing center. No one will harm you." This moment of unexpected dignity, documented in military police records from the 89th Infantry Division, represented the first fracture in a carefully constructed narrative about American barbarism that would completely collapse in the coming weeks. Between January and May 1945, Allied forces captured approximately 26,745 German women serving in military support roles. Of these, 5,413 were classified as Nachrichtenhelferinnen, communication auxiliaries, 3,168 as Stabshelferinnen, headquarters staff, and 2,112 as SS-Gefolge, SS auxiliaries, which included the unofficially designated comfort women for officer corps. These women, selected for appearance and racial purity, had been assured by SS leadership that capture by American forces would result in treatment worse than death. Military records from the European Theatre of Operations detail the standardized processing procedures established for female German prisoners. These procedures, codified in December 1944 as Allied forces anticipated capturing significant numbers of female auxiliaries, emphasize strict protocols: immediate separation from male prisoners, supervision exclusively by female military personnel when possible, private medical examination by female medical staff, and secure, segregated housing facilities. The reality these captured women encountered bore no resemblance to the Reich's warnings. Helga Schmidt, a 20-year-old from Frankfurt, who had served as a designated companion at an officer training facility, later testified to American investigators, "We were prepared to be treated as spoils of war. We had hidden small poison capsules in our undergarments. The moment when the American nurse handed me clean clothes and directed me to a private shower area where no men were permitted, this moment destroyed everything I had been told about Americans." The psychological impact of this initial encounter, the moment when blankets were offered instead of demands for nudity, would be documented in numerous debriefing interviews conducted by Allied intelligence officers. One report from May 1945 noted, "Female prisoners express consistent disorientation when encountering regulated, humane treatment. The contradiction between anticipated sexual violence and actual protective custody creates profound cognitive dissonance that facilitates rapid denazification." For women like Margarete Böhler, who had volunteered for service after her fiancé died at Stalingrad, The journey from that farmhouse cellar would lead through a systematic American processing system that would ultimately dismantle not just Nazi propaganda, but an entire worldview built on manufactured fear of the enemy. The mathematics of dignity were being written in private medical examinations, regulated housing facilities, and standardized nutritional provisions, revealing an American military capacity that rendered German propaganda not patriotic truth, but calculated deception. Stuttgart Processing Center, April 1945. The line of German women moved slowly through the converted gymnasium, each clutching the same olive-drab blanket issued during capture. Ingrid Weber, a 24-year-old former receptionist reassigned as companion to an SS Obersturmbannführer, felt her muscles tense as she approached the medical screening station. The previous night, the women had whispered among themselves in the temporary holding facility, steeling each other for the expected violations. "Remember, reveal nothing," an older woman had advised. "They will use medical excuses to humiliate us." Instead, Ingrid encountered First Lieutenant Maria Coletti, a registered nurse from Philadelphia, serving with the 127th Evacuation Hospital. "Please come this way," Coletti said through a translator, directing Ingrid to a screened-off examination area where no male personnel were present. Military medical records from the Stuttgart Processing Center document the standard procedure. Female nurses conducted initial examinations, female physicians performed any necessary further assessment, and male medical staff were prohibited from entering women's examination areas without a female chaperone present. The medical processing established for female German prisoners followed precise protocols documented in U.S. Army Medical Corps records. Each woman received a thorough health assessment, tuberculosis screening, delousing treatment if necessary, and standard vaccinations against typhus and smallpox. The entire procedure maintained physical privacy, a shock to women who had been warned of public humiliation and sexual assault. According to Red Cross inspection reports from April 1945, the processing centers maintained gender-segregated facilities with female military personnel handling all direct interaction with female prisoners whenever possible. "The American doctor gave me pills for my bronchitis," recorded Gerda Müller in a diary later collected by military intelligence. "When I explained I had been coughing for weeks, she provided additional vitamin supplements and increased my daily milk ration. The Reich doctor at our posting had told me weakness was a moral failure. This encounter, clinical care rather than punishment for illness, represented another fracture in Nazi indoctrination about American savagery. Quartermaster records document the specific provisions allocated to female prisoners. 2 sets of clothing appropriate for gender and climate, cotton undergarments, skirts or trousers, blouses, sweaters, stockings and closed shoes, personal hygiene items including soap and sanitary supplies, and standard mess allocations adjusted for female nutritional requirements at approximately 2,000 calories daily, including fresh milk, a luxury vanished from German civilian access months earlier. The processing routine extended beyond physical assessment. Military intelligence officers, many with pre-war backgrounds in psychology and sociology, conducted screening interviews to assess Nazi indoctrination levels and security classifications. These interviews, documented in intelligence files, reveal the systematic psychological disorientation experienced by women encountering humane treatment where they had expected brutality. Captain Eleanor Richardson, an intelligence officer with the Women's Army Corps, noted in her May 1945 report, "Female prisoners exhibit consistent patterns of disbelief when processing is completed without sexual violation. Several have asked when the real treatment will begin, indicating profound psychological conditioning regarding American behavior. This conditioning, carefully constructed through years of Goebbels' propaganda about American troops' treatment of women, created cognitive dissonance that military intelligence recognized as an opportunity for ideological deprogramming." The contrast between expected degradation and experienced protection extended to transportation procedures. Women transferred to permanent detention facilities traveled in standard military vehicles with regulated occupancy limits, adequate ventilation, regular rest stops, and gender-segregated facilities at transit points. International Red Cross observers documented these procedures in contemporaneous reports, noting compliance with Geneva Convention standards despite the Reich's refusal to extend similar protections to Allied female personnel. By the time processing completed and transport to permanent facilities began, the first psychological transformations were already underway. Erika Hoffmann, who had served as a companion at an officers' retreat near Munich, wrote in a letter later intercepted by military intelligence, "They treat us with distant correctness. No hands grabbing, no leering, no midnight visits to our quarters. American women in uniform supervise us directly. I don't understand. Everything we were told appears false." This cognitive rupture, documented across thousands of similar cases, laid the groundwork for the complete psychological re-evaluation that would follow during the camp experience. The systematic processing of female German prisoners was delivering its first lesson in American military values: regulated humanity rather than retributive violation. Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia, June 1945. Sunlight streamed through the windows of Barracks 17-B, illuminating a space that contradicted everything Helene Fischer had expected from American imprisonment. The women's quarters measured approximately 30 feet by 60 feet, subdivided with simple partitions, creating semi-private spaces for 6 occupants each. Each woman received an individual metal bed with clean mattress, 2 sheets changed weekly, 2 wool blankets, and a small footlocker measuring 24 inches by 16 inches for personal belongings. The floors were swept twice daily by rotating duty assignments among the prisoners themselves. "We have more privacy here than I had in Berlin during training," Helene remarked to her bunkmate, Greta Schneider. Before being assigned as companions to officers at a mountain retreat in Bavaria, both women had shared crowded dormitories with 20 others during their indoctrination period. Now, American military regulations specified minimum space requirements of 40 square feet per female prisoner, a standard documented in War Department housing directives that exceeded what most German women experienced in civilian life during the final war years. The daily routine maintained rigid predictability, another unexpected element of captivity. Wake-up bell at 6 a.m. Morning roll call at 6:30 a.m. Breakfast served from 7 Uhr to 7:45 a.m. Work assignments from 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m. Lunch from 12:15 to 1 p.m. Afternoon work or educational activities from 1:30 to 4:30 p.m. Free time from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. Dinner from 5:45 to 6:30 p.m. Evening activities from 7:01 to 9 p.m. Lights out at 10 p.m. This schedule, posted in German and English in every barracks, never varied. What most shocked the women who had served as comfort companions was the complete absence of demands for sexual services. Male guards never entered female barracks without a female military chaperone present. Interaction regulations prohibited male personnel from being alone with female prisoners under any circumstances. These protocols, documented in military police training materials from 1945, were designed specifically to prevent even the appearance of improper conduct. Camp records detail the provisions made for women's specific needs. The quartermaster supplied feminine hygiene products monthly to each prisoner. The camp laundry maintained separate facilities for women's clothing. Medical services included weekly visits from a female physician and daily availability of a female nurse. Women experiencing health issues received prompt attention with appropriate privacy. "I waited 3 weeks for the other treatment to begin," Ingrid Bauer confided to the camp chaplain during a counseling session. "In Germany, they told us American soldiers would pass us around like cigarettes, using us until we broke. Instead, the MPs stand outside our fence and are punished if they speak to us informally." This psychological adjustment, from expecting systematic abuse to experiencing systematic protection, appears repeatedly in chaplains' records and in security officers' reports throughout the female POW system. Religious services available for Catholic, Protestant, and Jewish prisoners provided another link to normalcy. Attendance was voluntary, yet camp records show that approximately 78% of female prisoners participated regularly, a rate far exceeding participation at male POW facilities. Chaplain Robert Anderson noted in his June 1945 report, "Female prisoners expressed particular gratitude for religious accommodation, frequently citing their surprise that Americans permit German women to worship freely. The mess hall served 3 meals daily, totaling approximately 2,200 calories, comparable to civilian rations in America, but far exceeding what women in Germany received by 1945. A typical daily menu included breakfast of porridge with milk, bread with jam, and coffee, lunch of soup, sandwich, and fruit, dinner of meat, potato, vegetable, bread, and occasionally cake or pudding. Women on work details received additional 500-calorie supplements. Medical records show that the average female prisoner gained 7.4 pounds during their first 3 months in American custody. For women like Helene, who had experienced increasingly severe food shortages in Germany, this regular nutrition represented another contradiction to Nazi claims. "In Berlin, they told us Americans would starve us," she wrote in a letter, reviewed by censors before mailing to relatives in Bavaria. "Instead, I eat 3 meals every day, with meat several times weekly. The bread is always fresh." Work assignments reflected gender assumptions of the era, but avoided exploitation. Women performed kitchen duties, laundry tasks, gardening, light maintenance, clerical work, and eventually factory sewing. Army records show payment of 80 cents daily for labor, identical to male prisoners, allowing women to purchase items from the camp canteen, writing materials, toiletries, candy, and cigarettes. This economic agency, limited but real, contrasted sharply with the complete dependency they had experienced as companions to Nazi officers. Camp Butner, North Carolina, August 1945. The incident report landed on Captain Margaret Wilson's desk at 07:30 hours. Private First Class. James Miller had been observed attempting to engage female prisoners in conversation through the fence during his guard shift. Within 45 minutes, Miller was removed from duty, replaced by another guard, and by noon, formal disciplinary proceedings had commenced. By the following day, he was transferred to another facility with a formal reprimand in his service record. The swift enforcement of non-fraternization policies represented standard procedure in women's POW facilities across the American detention system. Gretchen Hoffmann, former companion to an SS Sturmbannführer in the Alps retreat, watched the incident unfold from the recreation yard. She had expected American guards to behave like the Soviet soldiers she had glimpsed during the chaotic final days before capture. Reports from the Eastern Front had circulated through Germany describing mass violations of women in Soviet-controlled territories. According to International Red Cross estimates, between 95,000 and 130,000 German women had been assaulted by Soviet forces, while in American custody, documented cases of sexual misconduct numbered fewer than 35 across a female prisoner population exceeding 19,000. Military police training records reveal extensive preparation for female prisoner supervision. Guards assigned to women's facilities completed specialized training, emphasizing professional distance, appropriate language, and procedural protocols. The Women's Army Corps provided female personnel for direct supervision whenever possible, with 73% of women's compounds staffed primarily by female military police. Male guards were prohibited from entering female barracks without female military escorts present, a rule enforced through regular command inspections and documented in daily duty logs. "The Americans have created a system where we are untouchable," wrote Margaret Schmidt in a diary later collected by Army intelligence. "The guards are punished for speaking to us informally. They stand at attention when female officers inspect the compound. There is no bartering for favours, no midnight inspections, no special privileges in exchange for companionship. This system of protection, professionally regulated rather than individually determined, systematically dismantled expectations shaped by both Nazi propaganda and the women's prior experiences as comfort companions. The prevention system extended beyond guard conduct. Facilities design incorporated visibility requirements. Women's compounds remained observable from multiple guard positions, preventing isolated areas where misconduct could occur undetected. Regular inspections by both American female officers and International Red Cross representatives ensured compliance with protection protocols. Visiting committees from the YMCA Women's Division, the Federal Council of Churches, and other civilian organizations provided additional oversight documented in monthly inspection reports. When interviewed by Army psychologists in confidential sessions, former comfort girls frequently expressed the same sentiment: disbelief at a system designed to protect rather than exploit them. One study conducted at Camp Shanks documented this psychological transition. Subject initially expressed fear of American intentions, then confusion at protective measures, followed by tentative trust and eventually secure expectation of continued protection. This transformation from terror to security occurred across the female prisoner population, documented in thousands of individual case files preserved in military records. Camp Kennedy, Texas, November 1945. The typewriters clacked in precise rhythm as 24 German women completed their advanced secretarial training course. Ursula Hoffmann, who 18 months earlier had been selected for her blonde hair and Nordic features to serve as companion to officers at a mountain retreat, now demonstrated 65 words per minute typing speed and advanced English composition skills. The vocational training program, initially viewed with suspicion by the women, had evolved into the most requested activity in the camp. When they first offered education instead of labour, we thought it was American propaganda, Ursula later testified to researchers from Columbia University in 1953. We expected to be displayed as examples of German depravity, not trained for professional careers. This suspicion, documented across multiple POW facilities, transformed into enthusiasm as women witnessed genuine skill development with practical applications. By December 1945, camp records show 76% of eligible female prisoners voluntarily participated in at least one educational program. The rehabilitation curriculum expanded beyond basic vocational skills. Women received instruction in democratic governance, participating in barracks councils that managed internal affairs within regulatory guidelines. They studied American history, constitutional principles, and civic organization through specially designed courses developed by the War Department's Prisoner Rehabilitation Division. Advanced students explored literature, science, and mathematics. Camp Aliceville's records indicate female prisoners completed 22% more optional coursework than male prisoners in comparable facilities during the same period. For women who had been valued solely for physical attributes and compliance, this intellectual engagement offered profound psychological rehabilitation. Psychiatric assessments documented in military medical records show significant improvement in self-concept metrics among former comfort girls participating in educational programs. One study conducted at Fort Oglethorpe measured average increases of 37% in self-efficacy scores after 6 months of educational participation. Professional skill development extended beyond classroom instruction. Women trained in hospital support roles at Camp Atterbury assisted in the base medical facility, learning practical nursing skills under supervision. At Camp Clark, female prisoners mastered industrial sewing techniques producing military garments. Fort Devens offered business administration training where women learned accounting, inventory management, and office supervision. These programs, documented in quarterly reports to the Provost Marshal General, prepared women for employment opportunities that had never been presented as possibilities during their service as companions. The vocational outcomes proved remarkable. According to post-repatriation surveys conducted by American occupation authorities in 1948, former female prisoners who completed American training programs secured employment at rates 58% higher than comparable women without such training. Their average compensation exceeded typical female wages by approximately 34%, and they experienced unemployment rates 41% lower than the general female population in post-war Germany. Beyond practical skills, the rehabilitation programs address psychological recovery from exploitation. Female chaplains and Women's Army Corps officers conducted discussion groups where women could process their experiences in a non-judgmental environment. These sessions, documented in chaplains' reports but kept confidential to protect participants, allowed women to reconceptualize their experiences as victims rather than collaborators. Military records indicate that 82% of former comfort girls participated in at least 3 psychological support sessions, with 64% attending regular weekly meetings. Bremenhaber, Germany, June 1946. Brigitte Müller clutched the small suitcase containing her possessions as she descended the gangplank. Unlike her arrival in America as a prisoner, her return came with dignity. Civilian clothes rather than military-issue garments, a suitcase containing personal items, vocational certificates, and $47.50 in saved wages. The repatriation process, meticulously planned by American authorities, included complete documentation, health certification, and travel arrangements to her home region. "I returned differently than I left," she wrote in a journal later provided to researchers. "I was sent to America expecting violation but found respect instead. I leave America with skills rather than shame." This transformation, documented across thousands of similar cases, represented the culmination of America's most successful rehabilitation program, the complete reconstruction of former comfort girls into independent women prepared for civilian reintegration. The repatriation statistics tell an irrefutable story. According to War Department records, 94% of repatriated female prisoners received comprehensive documentation of their educational and vocational achievements in American custody. Approximately 82% received specific job referrals to American-affiliated employers in occupied Germany. Each returnee received standard provisions, 2 complete sets of civilian clothing, basic toiletries, non-perishable food supplies for the initial journey home, and medical documentation with 90-day supply of any required medications. The contrast with women who fell under Soviet control proved stark. Intelligence reports from 1947 documented the condition of women released from Soviet detention. Approximately 60% showing signs of malnutrition, 72% reporting medical issues requiring treatment, and 83% reporting experiences of systematic abuse. Women returning from American custody, by comparison, showed weight gain averaging 12 pounds from initial capture, comprehensive preventative health care, including dental treatment, and virtually no reports of sexual misconduct by American personnel. Ingrid Weber, who had trembled in fear at Stuttgart Processing Center, returned to Germany as an administrative assistant with the American occupation government, earning 175 marks monthly, a salary exceeding what many German men received in the devastated post-war economy. Her facility with English, typing skills certified at 70 words per minute, and basic accounting knowledge secured immediate employment, while most Germans faced desperate economic circumstances. Military government records from 1947 show that approximately 26% of repatriated female prisoners who had served as comfort companions secured employment with American occupation authorities, while another 32% found positions with newly established German businesses. The long-term impact extended beyond economics. a longitudinal study conducted by German sociologists in 1955, found that former female prisoners repatriated from America demonstrated markedly different attitudes toward democracy, gender equality, and international cooperation than comparable women without American detention experience. The study, measuring responses to standardized questions about political and social issues, revealed that these women supported democratic institutions at rates 47% higher than the general female population, endorsed women's professional development at rates 53% higher, and expressed positive views toward American-German cooperation at rates 68% higher. The transformation extended to the next generation. Children of these women, interviewed in a 1967 follow-up study, showed higher educational achievement, increased civic participation, and more progressive gender attitudes than their demographic peers. The intergenerational transmission of democratic values, professional aspirations, and human rights concepts created an unexpected legacy from the American detention program. What began with women whispering, "We don't want to undress," in fear of American soldiers, culminated in a generation of German women and their children embracing democratic principles, professional identity, and international cooperation. The story of female German prisoners represents history's most successful rehabilitation program. Transformation, not through punishment, but through protection and preparation. These women arrived expecting violation, but left as ambassadors for democratic values, carrying the revolutionary message that dignity, rather than degradation, represented true strength. Their story reminds us that sometimes the greatest victories are won not through retribution, but through rehabilitation, not through exploitation, but through education, not through fear, but through the simple act of treating enemy women with the dignity they had been told was impossible in American hands.